regrettably used to work at a hotel in our town. Our town had gotten hit by a hurricane a few months back, and a lot of houses were badly damaged, so a lot of people vacated the place. The hotel is about a 20-minute walk from my house. The town and hotel name I'll leave out of this, as I really just don't want anything traced back to me. The hotel was a very standard bed and breakfast type place. You know, where they serve wet scrambled eggs, frozen sausages, and assorted cereals.
Wet scrambled eggs, that's kind of disgusting.
The hotel had a busy month after the hurricane, as some people were out of their houses due to damages, but after a while, things quieted down, if anything, quieter than before the hurricane. I always worked nights, from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. Then someone would relieve me at 2 a.m. and they'd work till 10 or 11 a.m. I could always see how many people were checked into the hotel, and at the time it was only maybe 9 rooms, which wasn't a lot at all. I could go the whole night sometimes without seeing anyone. There was a back break room for employees with a coffee machine, fridge, table, and a couple sofa-type chairs. The employee bathroom was also back here. At night, I spent most of my time back here. There was a bell at the front desk that people would ring if they needed anything. I was in the back when I heard a deep voice from the lobby saying hello repeatedly. I got up and went through the door leading to behind the counter and saw a man on the other side of the glass. There was a glass barrier with an opening underneath about 10 inches high. He said he needed towels. I grabbed him a couple extra towels and slid them under the glass for him. He grabbed them rather aggressively, shot me this weird look, then walked to the room's hallway. I stayed in the lobby now, sitting in the rolling chair by the monitors, and I just watched that man on the camera walk down the hallway. He was looking around weirdly. Then he started rubbing the towels on his face. I said out loud, "What in the world?" Then he got in the elevator. So I went back to the break room. It was maybe 10 minutes later when I heard a voice again from the lobby. It was the same voice. I walked back out and that man was standing on the other side again. He said very loudly, "My key card is broken." I asked what his room number was. He said it was something random like 2C.
This guy's on some type of timing. He took some towels to then leave into the hallway with rooms just to wipe his face. Then come back to the lobby and say his key card to a non-existent room doesn't work. Smoking large weed.
Thing with a letter in it. Our hotel room strictly had numbers, no letters, so I knew this man was lying. I told him, "Sir, our rooms don't have letters. Are you sure you're staying here?" His reaction was not something I was expecting, nor was it something I wish I ever had to be victim to. He threw the towels on the floor, started smiling, slightly tilting his head as he got closer to the glass. When his face was practically pressed up on the glass, he said, "I'm going to kill you."
I told you he was on some type of timing.
Still with a smile on his face. Then he said it again, louder, and again. Each time he said it, it got louder until it was almost a scream. I screamed back at him, "I'm calling the police." And I did. I picked up the phone and showed him as I dialed 911. He kept his disturbing smile as he now started mocking me, calling the police. As I spoke to the dispatcher on the phone, explaining very loudly what was happening in front of my face, the sick man laughed and headed for the door in a slow walk. I told the dispatcher he was leaving, and when he was gone through the doors and out of sight, I said he was gone. She asked me if I still wanted an officer to show up, and I said no, it's alright. So the next couple hours of my shift went slow. I decided, for obvious reasons, to hang around in the lobby now instead of the break room. There was one guest who checked in during this time. At around 2 a.m., my relief came. I clocked out and was free to go home. I walked outside to the parking lot. It was cold out. I remember wishing I brought my coat. I walked with my hands in the pockets of my light jacket and my hood up. Then I heard a voice in the parking lot. I turned around. There was a line of bushes that covered the first floor windows of the hotel. It came from the bushes. I don't know what the voice said. I didn't care. I walked faster now. Once I got out of the parking lot, I was on a main road for a brief minute, but there were no cars on the road in this quiet town at this hour. After a minute, I turned left down a residential street that would eventually turn onto my block. It was dead silent out, not even the sound of any distant traffic, just the sound of my shoes hitting the pavement, and then the sound of someone else's shoes hitting the pavement behind me. Only it was the sound of someone running as if on their tiptoes trying to be quiet.
on your tiptoes trying to keep quiet. Like, bitch, you're not slick. I could feel you creeping up behind me. If this guy was really trying to get a quick bag, he would have taken his shoes off. Like, come on now.
By the time I turned around, they stopped. There was a car right behind me, and I almost knew that there was someone hiding behind it. I heard laughing, and then a familiar voice saying quietly, "I'm going to kill you, bitch."
This guy is not serious.
Without even seeing him, I knew it was that man. I looked around, planning out my next move. I couldn't outrun a man, let alone wearing my work shoes.
You couldn't outrun a man, so does that mean you're a woman? It can mean so many things. You're out of shape, you're trans, you're a woman, I don't know. But usually a man is not really out here saying he can't outrun another man. A man is gonna run anyways.
I looked at the nearest house. It had an upstairs light on. Someone was awake. I would go run and ring the doorbell for help. I looked back at the car, and I saw him. That man, peeking his eyes out from behind the car as he inched around it to the front. When he got to the hood, the rest of his face and upper body were exposed, and I could see his disgusting, crazy smile again.
Take a picture of his ugly ass and call the police. Were we too in the moment to think about that?
I ran for the house, screaming, "Help me." I made it to the front door and rang the bell at least 3 times, and that's when the man grabbed me and started choking me, whispering in my ear, "Die, bitch." In that moment, I thought my life was flashing before my eyes. And then an angel in the form of a man opened the front door to the house and screamed "hey" at the man choking me. The man's grip was released from my neck and I fell to the floor. I never turned to watch the man run away. But the man from the house helped.
I mean, they still got his in 4K, but she still should have at least taken a picture of him on the phone. The CCTV back at her workplace could only capture so much, you know. They don't be capturing people in 1080p.
me up and brought me inside. He gave me water and called the police for me, and I explained the whole story to the police. They collected the CCTV footage of the man from the hotel and put feelers out to track him. I was called into the police station when they did a lineup of people who looked similar to the man on the CCTV footage, and I was asked to point out which man I thought was him. I looked at all 5 of them for like 5 minutes, and I ultimately said it wasn't any of them. I don't know if the pressure and nerves got to me, but in the moment, I truly didn't recognize him to be in that lineup. I hope to this day I didn't make a mistake and let that man roam free.
She most likely did let him roam free. I mean, when his ugly ass was acting like this is Metal Gear Solid, hiding behind cars like she can't see him, and attempting to tiptoe behind her with his shoes on like she can't hear him, all she had to do was take out her phone, take a picture of him real quick, tell him that's why he gets no bitch, and then run to the house. She was not about to die for real. She was just being scared low-key. How do you attempt to kill somebody in someone else's front yard after having them ring the doorbell 3 times by choking them? Like in front of the man's door, in front of the man's door, because it was a man that came to save her. Come on now, tell me he's not stupid. Like,
stupid? I work in the pro department of a home improvement company. I work the closing shift with another cashier, who I'll call Nicole. Nicole is a really kind but quite timid cashier. She's also very pretty, so she has a lot of contractors hit on her. It's usually not that worrisome though. A few compliments, maybe a dinner invite, which she'd politely decline. I would probably ask her out as well, if it wasn't for one detail. Nicole does have a girlfriend, so being hit on by guys on a daily basis makes her rather uncomfortable. When we first met, I told her she ought to tell those guys about being gay, but she kept saying it wasn't any of their business.
I mean, I guess.
So she kept that part to herself. Nicole has become my best friend, and having another cashier there with you keeps things from getting lonely. We even cover for each other's lunch breaks. One day when I came back from lunch, Nicole started telling me about this rather creepy guy who was flirting with her. She said she politely turned him down, saying she was with someone already, and while he didn't seem happy, he did leave. I shrugged it off as nothing more than the usual horny guy and laughed it off. But later that day, the man came back. Nicole wasn't there, as she had left to help a customer find some lumber, so it was just me. He looked rather normal, probably handsome to most women, but he acted off. After looking around the area, I asked him if I could help him with anything. "I'm here to see Nicole," he told me.
Oh, damn. He has no frame. Handsome men are not supposed to behave like this. "I'm here to see Nicole." Well, Nicole is not here to see you.
I asked him how he knew her, and he said he had come in earlier and asked her out, to which she said yes, so he had come back in to pick her up. I told him she had left for the day, A usual lie everyone tells to cover for their friends. His smile went away as he started looking annoyed. He said he wanted to speak to Nicole and ask her out again, which contradicted what he had just told me about accepting his previous invite. I told him he could not do that, which caused him to cross his arms and ask me why not. I'm not the best liar when it comes to making up excuses on the spot. However, I didn't want to tell him Nicole was gay if she didn't want him to know it, so I just
He should have just told him, like honestly, yo, I can get, like, who cares about Nicole? Just tell him she's gay, bro.
blurted out that Nicole was my fiancée. His annoyed look went to confusion as he asked me how someone as pretty as she is could go out with someone like me. I'm not a Jason Momoa or anything, but I don't think I'm that bad looking. I told him it didn't matter and that her and I were getting married in a couple months, so he needed to back off. He gave me a death look, but didn't say anything. After an awkward silence, he left. After Nicole had gotten back, I told her what went down. She asked me to describe him, and after I told her what he looked like, she said that was the same guy who came in before. She was a bit creeped out by what went down, but she found the fiancé excuse rather funny. She even stated she'd rather be engaged to me than go out with him, which I'm guessing was a compliment. A couple of weeks went by, and we had all but forgotten about the man at this point. But one night, after it had gotten dark, Nicole and I were getting the trash together so we could close down the registers and go home. Just then, we hear a bang at the door, causing both of us to nearly jump out of our skins. It was the guy again. He had a wild look in his eyes as he kept his face pressed against the glass. "We're closed," I tell him. But he insists he needs to come in. Nicole yells again to tell him she's not interested, and for him to go away and leave her alone. But he yells that he's not here for her. He's here for me.
Okay. So clearly someone is refusing to take a hint. And that's how we're gonna play? Bro, that's gay. What do you mean by that? I'm here for him. Hey, yo.
He then says that if he can, quote-unquote, take out her husband, then she'd be all his. Based on that, he wanted to kill me.
That's still gay, low-key.
I tell Nicole to run to the manager's office and call the police, and I'll stay here and watch him. I won't lie though, I was pretty afraid to be in that tiny little area if the guy's able to get in.
You're in a store filled with weapons. I don't think that's gonna be a problem, buddy.
He wasn't the biggest guy, but he could have had a weapon on him. Plus, the store doesn't allow us to have self-defense items on us, so I was on my own here.
Who cares about the store's policy? You're closed anyways. You mean to tell me you're gonna let the store's policy be the thing that can get you potentially dead? Is that what you're trying to say to me?
The guy then started ramming the sliding doors like he was crazy. The doors were rattling, and I could have sworn we're gonna come off its base. Just then, Nicole comes running back around the corner with a 2x4 in her hand, yelling that the cops are on their way.
A 2x4? Are you serious? In a store filled with weapons, you go for a 2x4? Nicole is not serious about life, bro.
Finally, the man decided to leave. The closing manager met the officers when they came, and he took them to review the cameras. Thankfully, the man was caught and arrested, but Nicole nor I felt safe working there any longer. We're still friends and even attend the same college together, but we do have separate jobs now while we pay our way through classes. I'm glad she was there to help me with the rogue man, as I hate to imagine what he might have done to me, or worse, what he might have done to her. She says she's glad I was there for her as well, as having a guy around tends to make men like him less confident in what they might try. It was a wake-up call for me as to how dangerous it can be for some girls when an interested guy just doesn't want to take no for an answer.
She didn't do shit though. In fact, she was the one that caused the whole problem. I don't know, maybe start telling men that you are gay as hell so you could potentially avoid things like this. You want to die before letting a man find out that you have a girlfriend. Help me understand this. He would have whooped this guy's ass and get away with the woman by force, no consent. That's how it was gonna get down if he got inside, this store. Nicole coming in with a 2x4, that's actually gonna do some shit. In a building filled with weapons to pack this man up swiftly, he's on one side talking about it's against the policy to use weapons. Like, what the Both him and Nicole are not serious about life, bro. A man like him would have gone packed up. What do you mean having men around would make other men less confident in the eyes of, the other man? That, like, what the This guy was a pansy, probably average looking. It's not a threat. It's light work. No reaction.
So this happened a little over 2 years ago now, and I wanted to share it somewhere just to look back on it one day and never forget the lesson I learned. It was 2016 and I had just started a new job at a motel. It was low pay, but I needed an office job. One of my friends, Michael, got me this job. For a few days, I did training with the owner in the mornings. For 2 nights, Michael trained me. Our job was the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. Nothing exciting, checking guests in and doing paperwork. My boss, or the owner, went away with his wife on vacation for a week, which is attributed to the swift training I had to endure. So it was my first night alone on the night shift. There was a monitor with security cameras around the motel's property, and large glass windows all around the office building with a glass door. There was no night window like most motels have. It was fairly early in the night, at about 1 a.m. I was just doing my normal check-in paperwork. That's when a man walks in and asks if we have any rooms available. Usually if someone's sketchy, my boss has me lie and say no, but he seemed normal at the moment. Without hesitation, I said, yes, of course, just for one? And he replies, yes. So I begin creating the reservation on the computer when I notice he starts swatting the air and making spitting noises, as if he's being surrounded by flies.
Okay, that's kind of sus. Maybe he's on the spectrum. Who knows?
I try to ignore it. As far as I'm concerned, it wasn't my business. So I try to check him into the room as quickly as possible. I give him his key and he's on his way. At this point in time, I could be described as very timid. I had a lot going on in my personal life, so I hope you can all understand my reaction to what happens next. The man comes back from his room and slams his hand on the glass door, causing me to jump. Absolutely frightened, I look up to see him just staring at me. He cracks the door and puts his head through and says I can't get into my room.
You don't have to do all of that just because you can't get into your room. Like, what's wrong with you? Just a minute ago, you were swatting the air like there's insects flying around you. What if I told you there's a big fly in front of me right now that I have to handle? I have a bee repellent in the form of my hands. It's called Max Repel from the Pokemon games. I'll make sure that you get familiar with it real soon.
Why won't you let me into my room? And my only defense is trying to be helpful. So I replied, maybe there's something wrong with your key. Let me give you another one. The look he had in his eyes was inexplainable. I felt like I was in absolute danger. I handed him his new key, and he went back to his room. I tried texting Michael because he's the one who trained me, though it was in the middle of the night and he was asleep. I needed some guidance. With no reply from Michael, I noticed the man trudging down the stairs to come back. I go into absolute panic mode. I run into the back office and lock the door, and I pull out my pocket knife. It's important to keep protection when working at night. I hear the man in the office yelling, hello, hello, why won't you let me into my room? Do you not like me? Me being an absolute idiot and not standing my ground and just calling the police when I'm feeling scared, I decided to take the situation on alone. I reply, I'm just on the phone, I'll be right out. I then start calling Michael over and over for help. No answer. I decided to take a few breaths and then step out of the office. The man was not there. He was in the bathroom. I start hearing him talking to himself, angrily saying, kill her, kill her. My heart sank.
Damn, I mean, like, if you have autism, just say that, you know, you don't really have to behave like all of that. It's not necessary. He was on some type of timing as well, most definitely. He was trying to catch a body on that very night. Imagine being a woman standing by the door of your motel room, looking at some autistic man try to get into your room to unalive you. It's crazy.
Still being an idiot and not calling the police, he comes out and I say, your key was broken, I'm sorry. Let me escort you to your room. He agrees, thankfully. I was wearing a long-sleeved sweater, so with my arms down, I was able to hide my knife in my hand while holding it. I begin to walk outside, and he seemed insistent to walk behind me. We begin making our way to the staircase and up towards his room. I was sweating from how nervous I was, continuously looking behind me to make sure he wasn't going to make a move. He stops at a room, and I stop at his room a few doors down. I smile and say, oh, that's the wrong room. This is your room, as it clearly said on the door. This whole time he was going to someone else's room and trying to open the door. After letting him into his room, I quickly ran back to the office and locked the door, and I found out there was a lone woman staying in the other room he was trying to get into. The next guest I checked in was a police officer from a few towns over. I felt bad for confiding in him about the guy, but he seemed willing to keep an eye and ear out. The next night, the man came back, but I had the doors locked and told him we're all booked up. I explained to my boss what happened when he got back from vacation. However, he didn't take it very seriously. I continued to work there on the night shift for the next year, where many other strange encounters have happened, but this was one of the worst.
That's crazy.
In 2014, a man named Ethan and his wife Danny were spending a weekend together on Vancouver Island, which they had done many times before. The couple has a lot of experience on the island and just camping in general. Vancouver Island provides an optimal camping setting because of its mix of scenic beaches and dense forest. The couple had many successful camping trips on the island, until something truly terrifying happened to them on their final outing on the island. Ethan and Danny were far from any roads or civilization, enjoying the solitude. They set up camp on a beach a good distance from anywhere and kept a fire going. To get to the trail leaving the beach was a kilometer along the beach and 2 kilometers to the road through the forest. The couple had met another camper named Leon from New Zealand, who they ran into earlier that day on the beach. Leon was planning on sleeping in his van, which he parked back up on the road. The couple invited him down to the beach for a fire, and the three shared a bottle of wine, talking amongst themselves around the fire. This is where things started to get a little creepy. The sun was starting to go down by this point, and the trio kept hearing what sounded like female voices from behind them in the bushes dividing the beach from the forest. It wasn't too dark out yet though, so it was still possible that they were just other hikers or campers nearby, or even a group who anchored offshore and the sound.
There were bad bitches there? That's strange. Bad don't go camping or hiking. They're usually more into that degenerate lifestyle, you know? You know, the smoking, drinking, partying, getting into bad relationships. You guys know what I'm talking about, the degenerate lifestyle.
Was just bouncing in a weird way. All three of them could agree that they were hearing female voices though. On that note, it was getting late and a little dark, so Leon said goodbye and set out to hike back to his car before it was too dark. Ethan and Danny stayed by their campsite and stoked the fire because Danny was starting to get creeped out by the voices, which continued on into the darkness. It sounded like 2 female voices speaking, but whatever that was being said was unintelligible. It sounded to the couple like the voices were not far beyond the tree line now. They stayed up very late tending to the fire, and only when the voices had finally stopped, they decided to put out the fire and go to sleep in the tent. Before doing so, the two had...
So I'm saying, do people not go out camping with guns or knives or a baseball bat or anything like that? Do people just not do that? Back in the caveman era, these people, you can say, were camping for all their lives, and I'm positive a lot of them were camping with weapons on them at all times. So do people just not think to go out camping with at least some sort of protection from people on, you know, different type of timing? And animals as well, like bears and shit like that?
Scanned the cove with a flashlight several times looking for boats that could have been the source of the talking, but there was nothing in sight. It was around 3 a.m. when they laid down finally, ready to catch some shut-eye. But about 15 minutes after they laid down, Ethan and Danny heard footsteps in the area around their campsite, over by where the fire was. They came from the direction of the bushes toward the inland behind them, a direction that was not traversable by people. The couple lay there, hoping it was just a bear or any animal, because the only bears on the island are black bears, which usually are very timid around people. The footsteps went from the fire, then over to the tent, then back into the woods. 5 minutes later, the footsteps came back again to the fire, and now, clear as day, there were 2 female voices talking gibberish very loudly. Their communication was not resembling any languages known to Ethan or Danny, and they seemed to be talking over each other, having what could barely be considered to be a conversation at full volume in the dead of night very far away from civilization without using lights to navigate through the dense brush relatively quietly in a direction that seemed impossible to traverse on foot. The 2 voices moved from the fire pit area over to the tent, still talking at a loud volume. They stood over the tent talking for a few seconds, then went completely dead as night silent. They went back into the woods to never be seen or heard again. Ethan and Danny lay there completely frozen and afraid for a long time. They woke up around 11 a.m. the next day because of how late they fell asleep. They packed up first thing and never returned. The couple probably made the best decision to remain quiet in the tent, not drawing attention to themselves from whoever or whatever was outside the tent.
These were women he definitely could have handled with ease if he really wanted to, no cap. Could have at least peeked out a little bit to see if they were bad or not. They could have been hoes from the wilderness, a whole different breed. Who knows?
The following pictures you're about to see were taken by hikers Kylie Cashwell and John Stone, who both live in Eagle Mountain, Utah, a small town south of Salt Lake City. For the past few years, they had been exploring forests in search of interesting things, and one day they found it. One day Kylie was hiking in Cedar Fort, just 5 miles south of Salt Lake City. While hiking, she found large amounts of animal bones and piles of junk people had dumped. But things started to get strange when she started coming across strange symbols and animal parts scattered throughout the forest, some of them in weird formations. On September 15th, she decided to bring her friend Josh along with her to show him in person the unusual things she was finding. This time, the two came across something even more disturbing. On the trail, there was a severed deer head and a pentagram surrounded by deer legs, which were not there the first time Kylie walked the trail. The sun was going down, and after getting their
So they were in a site where satanic rituals were taking place, obviously.
pictures, they agreed it was time to head back to the car. But the more they walked, they realized they didn't recognize the path they were on. So the two start looking around for anything that could refresh their memory of where they were. But as it got dark out, the two accepted that they were lost. With nothing but their phone flashlights to navigate, they started getting the feeling they were being watched. As they picked up their pace, the two started to hear the trees and bushes moving at least 20 feet to their right, made more concerning by the fact that there was no wind that night. The two started to panic and hurried onto a trail they found, hoping it would take them back to Kylie's car. Just when things couldn't seem to get any worse, Kylie and Josh heard a scream so deep and horrific that it sounded neither human nor animal. The two sprinted down the trail, Kylie making a conscious effort not to look back, but Josh did. And Josh claimed to see a large black figure on the trail behind them, too big to be a human. The two made it to the car by some stroke of luck, losing whatever was chasing them. So they left the forest and went straight home. Upon doing research, Kylie found documents of common cult practices reported in those woods, as well as numerous murders and disappearances that happened in the area throughout the years. Like Ethan and Danny in the first story, Kylie has not returned since.
Do y'all think they saw a skinwalker for real? Anyways.
Deep in the woods in northern Germany, two friends were hiking in an area formerly territory of the German Democratic Republic when they came across these strange periscope-like pipes protruding from the ground. Feeling either brave or foolish, they decided to investigate further. They discovered a doorway hidden behind several bushes, covered by a large wooden lid. What they found hidden beneath the ground is a pretty disturbing piece of history. The doorway led to a huge abandoned army bunker. There were several tunnels leading off in different directions, which intersected a long central corridor. There were so many different directions to go that exploring the place felt like going through a maze to the two friends. They tried not to stray far away from each other in fear of getting lost. That's how big the place was. As they ventured deeper into the structure, they came across German writing on the wall, which translated to "help." Curiosity still got the better of them, and they continued deeper into the bunker. And as they did, the structure became more and more decayed. More writings were found on the walls, this time reading, "Hello Satan, I love you."
Yo, what? Hello, Satan. Oh no.
Some of the rooms and corridors were flooded and smelled like sewage. They made their way into a very large room with a strange machine in the center. It's very possible the previous occupants had fled the bunker in a hurry, as there was a single shoe still stuck in the sludge on the floor. Why wouldn't someone have time to grab one shoe unless they were in a hurry? The structure was believed to be an old military bunker, possibly used for shelter by the Nazis during World War II. But why did the soldiers seemingly leave in such a hurry? And whether they were the ones who had written the warning messages on the walls is unknown.
I mean, all right. That's a story.
In this last story, for the person's safety, I'll refer to him as just Bill. Bill is an avid hiker who in 2016 was visiting his brother upstate New York near Downsville. Bill's brother owns a small house and a barn up there, and from time to time Bill and other family members would go up to visit. This was in the late fall, and so the foliage was already mostly orange, and more than half of the leaves had fallen off the trees. Bill was hiking a narrow trail which was not far from his brother's place. This trail is in the middle of a very rural area, and it connects from the occasional property to property. So when Bill stumbled across a duffel bag on the ground in the middle of the woods, it was a surprise. The duffel bag looked like it was relatively new. It didn't look dirty as if it had been sitting in the woods for an extended period of time. There was a foul odor emanating from the bag, however, like something rotting inside. Bill assumed the worst, but he knew he had to open the bag to see what's inside.
You know what that means? There's a body of some sort in there, most likely.
In case it actually could have been a person.
I mean, opening the bag. I mean, technically you don't have to, but if you must, then you do you, of course.
He was building up the courage to open the zipper to the bag, but before he could, he heard footsteps approaching from off the trail and a voice saying, "That's mine, please don't touch it." A large man in a dirty jacket and jeans was quickly approaching from the woods and grabbed the duffel bag off the ground. The two exchanged looks for a moment. Bill told the man he assumed the bag was forgotten by someone, and the man told him he was storing his kill from his hunt in the bag. Even though Bill isn't a hunter, he knew it's standard to use a cooler for storing fresh kill, not a duffel bag of all things. This also wouldn't explain the foul smell so soon, as usually dead bodies only start to smell after a few days, not right after death. So he apologized and continued walking down the trail, with a little more speed in his step. It's likely the man noticed Bill's nervousness, because he heard the duffel bag get dropped on the floor as he was walking away, but as he looked back, he didn't see the man anymore. Bill nervously continued along the trail, taking out his phone to try to call his brother for an emergency pickup by the road, but he didn't have any reception in the woods. All he could do was press forward and avoid crossing paths with that man again. But as he continued on, he kept hearing leaves crunching from not far behind him, and any time he'd look back, the coast seemed clear. But eventually, his fear that he was being followed became real.
Yo, that man is like, shit. Maybe he knows too much. I must get rid of the evidence today. I'll have to pack him up now.
He saw that man following him in the distance in a stalkerish manner, hiding behind a tree. Without thinking, Bill started to run as fast as he could down the trail. He knew he was being followed without even looking back because he could hear the leaves being crushed from not too far behind him. Bill came to an abandoned-looking property with overgrown grass, and having grown too winded to continue running, he attempted entry to the old house through the back door, and was able to get inside. Bill hid under a cot in the first bedroom he found, and he heard the back door open again, followed by heavy footsteps moving in a hurry. They went from room to room, and Bill could hear the man's heavy breathing from also being out of breath. The man's footsteps came into the bedroom just for a second and left right after. He didn't look under either of the two cots. Bill heard the back door to the house open and slam shut again, but he laid under the cot for another half an hour, not taking any risks. He only got up when he realized it would be dark soon, and he needed to get to a road to call for help. He proceeded to leave the house and run down the dirt trail by the house that was most likely once used as a driveway, which led him to a road. From here, he eventually hitched a ride with a passing car, who gave Bill a lift back to his brother's house, where Bill would call the local police department and report his encounter. Given the severity of the case, police would show up to the house to get a more detailed description of the man's face, the location it happened, and other information. Though it was never technically confirmed what was in that duffel bag, the rotting smell would already be clue enough. But the fact that the man so intently chased after Bill shows that he was hiding something that he didn't want any witnesses for, most likely dumping a dead body.
He got away with his life. He was about to be put in the bag next. That's crazy, isn't it? Unless he goes to the gym, he wasn't about to win no encounter if he got found whatsoever. So it's good that he didn't use his brain to look under the bed, which is an obvious hiding spot. But anyways, we were dealing with a big man. I mean, even as a man, you're still gonna need big muscles to move a man like that. So he got away with his life. Lucky for him. Lucky for him.